Hello, I'm Gordike Wessel from Oversourcing, and I have the pleasure today to talk with Alexander Kohnstamm from Fairware Foundation. Alexander, how are you today?
Good, thank you very much, Gordike. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great that you took the time to speak with us here. So maybe you might want to introduce yourself a bit. Tell us a bit about your background. How did you personally get started? What's your actual educational background?
It's funny that you ask, because actually my education is in Japanese language and economics. So that's a long time ago, but I'm a Japanologist, as they say. So it was a little bit in my education, but certainly when I started in business, I think the international business arena for me has always been very exciting and very interesting. And even when I moved into development, which I consider myself in now, I always try to find a way to combine the private sector and the private side of the economy for public good, for public interest. And that's very much also what we try to do at Fairware. With the member companies of Fairware, we try to strive for public goals and people using a better private sector approach.
That's very nice. How actually did the Japanese influence that?
Well, I don't know much about the role of Japanese. I don't want to say much about the role of Japanese in CSR at this moment, but certainly my background has helped me see issues from different perspectives. There are very big differences between the way people see the world and see their own environment in Japan and how we do that in Holland, where I'm from. And bridging those differences has been an interesting exercise in looking at interesting perspectives from looking at issues from different perspectives.
Wonderful. Alexander, maybe you can tell us a bit about Fairware and its mission.
Yes, of course, gladly. So Fairware Foundation has been working for 20 years now with our member companies. They are brands in the garment industry, so fashion, workwear. Of course, we have different types of garment brands. They are members of Fairware, about 140 brands. And together with them, we try to show that it is possible to do business in a better way, with respect for human rights and the labor circumstances of workers in the factories. And not only that is possible, but also how it's possible. So that's one big element of what we do. We work in the main offices of those brands. We work in 10 production countries in their supply chains, and we support them in doing business a better way, but we also verify to what extent they do that, and then publish extensive reports on each brand on our website. And consumers and all other stakeholders can see how the brand is doing. In the countries, we also support that with a complaints mechanism. So any worker in the supply chain of one of our member brands can pick up the phone in their own language and file a complaint if they need to. We also do factory audits in a very specific Fairware recipe, and we give trainings on labor rights. And that's one big element of what Fairware does. The other big element is that we advocate human rights at work, using a grant of the Dutch government, Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs, working with labor unions, with employers associations, with factories, with brands, with anyone involved throughout the supply chain to improve the lives of workers, to improve laws, regulations, and also actual practice.
That's pretty exciting. So is the difference to other initiatives also that you really publish reports about the brands, about their practices publicly?
Well, that's one difference indeed. Even every complaint that is logged is published. So we are very, very transparent. And I think it's fair to say that the way we work with our members is probably the most intensive around. So the standards are probably among the highest, or even the highest, I would say. and that is possible because we work very closely with those members. So this is not to say that others are not equally contributing to CSR, but our recipe, as it were, is intensive collaboration at a very, very high level.
Alexander, what are Fairware's current initiatives and priorities when we probably take the pandemic out that changed the whole landscape a bit?
Yeah, well, I'm sure we're going to get back to the pandemic because it's the world is not, I cannot imagine the world anymore without it. But yeah, looking at Fairware more on the long run. So our brands, our member brands are front runners, and we help them implement an extremely high level of due diligence and remediation. So as I said, we show that it's possible to do business in a better way, and also how. But besides doing that with our members, which is one of our main goals and activities, we will continue to do that. We are also expanding that to the entire industry, because we believe that this way of doing business should in fact become the new normal. And that term actually we used a lot until recently. The new normal was really a way of saying that what the current way of doing business is should not be normal. The current model of using the supply chains in often an exploitative way should not be the normal practice. So we wanted to go for a new normal, a term which now in the pandemic has got a different connotation, but nevertheless.
Thank you. So you mentioned it, COVID-19 pandemic has changed a lot in terms of the apparel marketplaces worldwide, but I'm not sure if everybody in the audience is aware about the impact to European brands. So in your perspective, how will COVID impact the corporate social responsibility and the sustainability behavior of European brands?
Well, sure. The European brands have been impacted heavily by COVID. Many shops were closed. Some could cover that with some online sales, but you know, when people don't go out of their houses, they also tend to buy less clothes, I think. It has been different from company to company. We also have a lot of members with an outdoor specialty, and I think the outdoor industry is picking up quite nicely in many cases. People are not going on the long, faraway holidays, but staying in their own country, maybe going hiking or otherwise enjoying the outdoor. So yes, they have been heavily hit, but it's different per subsector, I would say. One subsector that has been heavily hit is merchandising. Maybe not many people think of that, but if you are specialized in merchandising for pop concerts and there are no pop concerts, then obviously that is a big issue. But I think across the board, the garment sector has been heavily hit. The question is, of course, what do you do then as a brand, and especially in relationship to your suppliers? Do you say, well, our problem is your problem? Well, to a certain extent it is, and it will be, because when consumers buy less and retailers buy less, obviously sooner or later you're going to also order less from your suppliers. However, you could see immediately a big difference also in terms of CSR between those who took CSR and that relationship with their suppliers seriously and kept the orders that were on board or already in progress, etc., and made good negotiations and in a good relationship with their suppliers on the one hand, and others that said, well, now it's a pandemic, all bets are off, and we don't pay for anything, we don't want anything, keep it, and we keep the money. I think there's been a big difference in how CSR has been approached during this pandemic, and it's had a big effect on the brands, but certainly also on the factories and the workers.
So you say it's a difficult situation. On the one hand, the retail markets has broken down, so brands also were in a difficult situation, while on the other hand, especially in the environment of Fairware, probably the relationships between suppliers and customers are pretty long-term and pretty deep. So you assume that there has been probably in a higher share an ethical and fair negotiation have taken place to somehow address the issues of both sides?
This is a very interesting point you raise, Koleke, because I think that's the core, actually, the long-term relationships. I believe that long-term relationships are the key, not only to CSR and sustainability in a broader sense, but also for proper business, for business prosperity. And I think the COVID pandemic has shown, well, it has done a few things. It has exacerbated the problems in the supply chain. So people with way too low wages now find themselves also fired or out of work otherwise, with no social security or very little. And because they were consistently underpaid, they don't have a buffer. So their countries don't have a buffer. And because the factories were in many cases underpaid, taking orders at too low cost structurally, and the workers don't have any buffer, health insurance, unemployment insurance, savings, because they were structurally underpaid. So yes, it has exacerbated the issues, and I'm not even speaking of the occupational health and safety element, which we can imagine is also more complex. But it's also shown that long-term relationships throughout the supply chain are actually a key element in understanding why one business is doing better than the other. Also why one brand is doing better than the other. Because I firmly believe that the long-term relationships that you talk of are extremely valuable for business throughout the supply chain. So if you have an investor who thinks of the long term, that will work down all the way to a worker who is valued and whose commitment to the workplace is rewarded. And now I think I see it very clearly when I talk to our members. Yes, brands with those long-term relationships with their suppliers have structurally done better at CSR and now are finding themselves also doing better business-wise.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, when you see the pictures in some of the countries where workers are moving back to their home cities without work, without buffers, without sufficient food and water, this is terrible pictures that we see. Which leads me to my next question. What you believe how COVID will impact factories and their workers? We see factories closing, we see parts of the entire supply chain disappearing, we see people losing their job. How do you think, and to which extent can this recover? Where do you see the impact there?
Well, I think we can't deny that this pandemic will have a longer term effect than just these few months. So now, yes, the cancellation of immediate orders, that was a problem. And as I said, it makes a difference. It made the difference between ethical and unethical behavior. But what of course will start happening is that collections will not switch as fast as they used to. Styles will be carried over to the next year. So orders in general in the I would almost say post-COVID period, hopefully soon, but the orders will be decreasing there as well. So yes, even with a long-term relationship with suppliers, there will still be pressure on factories, and probably some many will not survive. Some rationalization in that sense will happen. Maybe there was also a slight surplus of supply. Too much competition also between suppliers, even between countries, for the lowest price. This rat race to the bottom. So it might be that the brands who are now treating their suppliers fairly or not fairly may find out that they will need their suppliers even more in the next period. At the same time, it will also probably mean that a lot of people who have lost their jobs will not be getting them back, and are already looking for jobs in different sectors, which is of course very difficult. Again, I think investing in people and investing in relationships is the way forward, and that also means that you want to keep your workers who have acquired skills while working with you. And it also means that you want to keep your customers, and the customers want to stay with you because they know you and your workers deliver quality and deliver on time.
Yes, and this is already the bridge. Let us talk about overall sourcing again. So what is your outlook on ethical business practice? Are you rather optimistic or concerned about the future?
Well, I think let me get back to what I said in the beginning about fairer. This new normal. We're going to look for a better word, but nevertheless, this more ethical way of doing business and making that the normal way of doing business. I think actually COVID crisis has also shown the need for that even more drastically and put the spotlight much more on CSR. And I believe there is a momentum like never before to go for CSR structurally, and I'm very strengthened by seeing how our members and several other companies are indeed putting more effort into this now, even though they are themselves in very difficult circumstances. So I would really like to salute those people who have had much more work due to the crisis here at the brand level, much more work due to the crisis, but at the same time also stepped up their efforts on CSR because they knew that their suppliers and the workers were in even more difficult circumstances. So yes, there is a momentum to move forward with this new normal. And I think what it also means is that we have to think of the position or the value of the product that we are talking about, the garments, and the value for everybody along the chain, the value of work also. And there we need to make some fundamental changes.
So it's quite inspiring that you see like that this terrible times that we go through also might have some very positive impact maybe at the end, because it shows the weaknesses of the current systems and might focus or shift back the perspective on what is the value in the product and the people that have created it. Yeah, so that's really inspiring. And probably as a last question to close this round is, how would you personally define sustainability?
That's a wonderful question. Because it is really also a matter of people. Many of the things that we call sustainability and CSR are really a matter of mentality. They're not a matter of money or policy. I mean, the way women are treated in a production line, it's a choice whether you shout at them and think that they will work harder, or whether you treat them with respect and make them part of your team. It's about people. So yes, a personal view on sustainability. I appreciate the question. Well, I think what I mentioned, the mutually beneficial relations of trust between factories and the buyers, but also between the investors and the brands, even between the shops and the brands, between the worker and the factory manager, the owner, the line manager. Those long-term mutually beneficial relations of trust are the key to sustainability. And translated to the garment sector, I believe that means that we need a worker who's properly valued by the factory. We need a factory that produces quality products, but at fair prices and in reasonable delivery times, based on a mutually beneficial relationship with their customers. We need brands that make a healthy profit, because even at brands level, the margins are too thin, I believe, and the Corona crisis has shown that. So we need them to make a healthy profit and keep some of that profit also to invest in their supply chains in the future. And we need consumers, finally, who value the product that they buy. Because I believe that consumers think they are happy buying a t-shirt for half the price that it should be, and they feel happy and lucky. But I think they will feel even more happy if it's something they can value and cherish and wear many times, knowing that it doesn't only feel good physically, but also knowing how it's been produced.
So not only feel good, but also is good.
Yes.
This is a wonderful closing word. Alexander, thank you very much for the talk. It was very inspiring and great to have you here.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.